All right, welcome to Go the Distance podcast. Our guest today is Vlad Mertumian, the CEO of Restoration Inbound. Restoration Inbound is a leading marketing agency serving the fast-growing restoration industry. In our conversation, we deep dive into the dynamics of the restoration industry, how to win in a competitive space, AI and the future of restoration. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow in your favorite podcasting app. Let's get started. Welcome to Go the Distance, the podcast that brings you the top contractors, disruptors, and investors redefining home services. Stay ahead with cutting-edge insights on business strategy and technology built to fuel your growth. Hosted by entrepreneurs and investors Nick Durbano and Ethan Song, Go the Distance is where the future of the trades take shape.
Good morning. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate you taking the time today. As always, it would be great to start the episode with a quick rundown of your own personal history and maybe what Logic Inbound does.
Yeah. So Logic Inbound, so that was actually the third agency I started. So basically, my first original company was called Shoplets LLC. And that was literally because all I knew at 17 was in business, people shop. So I said, let me call a company called Shoplets. And we did apps when I was about 17, 18 years old. This is now, over 10 years. I'm going to date myself. But basically, we had over 300,000 downloads on the Android App Store, 30,000 monthly active users. And we didn't know how to monetize and we didn't know how to grow further. So I ran into that mark there, right? And hit my head on that ceiling. So then I ended up starting Sky Real because I thought, it's not the industry, it's B2C. If I do a B2B, then I'll succeed. So I started B2B. It was like a CRM company for realtors, and we got stuck at about 10K a month, and I didn't have the patience to stay with it, and I still got stuck at growing. So I said, man, I really need to learn marketing. I really need to learn sales. I'm doing these campaigns, but I need to have other clients where I could just completely focus on them and just completely focus on marketing versus all these other business pieces. So that's where I started Logic Inbound. And then after about 5 years in Logic Inbound, we started in 2016. In 2020, we ended up starting to pivot into this company now, which is Restoration Inbound. So we have 30 just kind of generic clients, home service companies, plumbers, et cetera. And then we have 35 just restoration companies. And I'm focused exclusively on getting more of those and planning to cap it at 100.
And because I guess when you first started, you were servicing different home service businesses.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about restoration that got you excited, and why did you decide to focus on that specific vertical?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's really 3 reasons why you should focus on a niche, right? And the first 2 are pretty obvious, right? The first 2 are, do you like the people, and is there money in it, right? So the people part is where I like restorations, and I'll get into that. The money part, in all home service companies, right? Whether you're a landscaper, a roofer, there's billion-dollar companies, right? And in restoration, there's also billion-dollar companies. That's how you know there's money in what you're doing. There's a billion-dollar company in that space. So the money's there. Then the question is, do I like the people? And so I had amazing mentors who really welcomed me early on. People like Mark Davis, who's the owner of Pure Clean Corporate, one of the partners. And then, Michael Pinto. I bumped into other people, just like yourself. I hopefully I try to show you the same friendliness. Ethan, when I met you as I had, where they just, hey, how are you doing? What are you looking to learn about the industry? Happy to take you out for lunch. And they were really a great community of people. And I felt like, wow, I'm really welcomed here. This is my kind of group of people I really like. I want to help these people. I want to see them grow. And then the third thing that you need to have, which is key in marketing, which is, running Restoration Inbound in the marketing agency world, is you need to have case studies, right? So the joke goes, in the marketing agency world, you take on your first client, you're going to tell them you're really good. If you have 2 clients in a vertical, you're going to tell them you're a worldwide expert. So I already had, actually, by just coincidence, I had about 60 clients. I think I had about 35, 40 clients, but about 2 were in the restoration space. They did mold, another one did water and mold as well, and fire. And then I was talking to a third, and that's when I was like, okay, we can actually make this a real thing because we have experience as well. So you kind of mix those together, and that's how you get me in the space.
And is there anything like that's right beyond the fact it's a big market, there's some great people you met, any like specific about the business model of restoration businesses
That's a great
that
one.
you can share? Let's say versus like, HVAC or plumbing or pest control, other verticals
Yeah,
of home
yeah.
service. Like, what makes restoration unique?
Yeah, what makes restoration unique? Yeah, so there's definitely a lot more, right? I gave you the top three, right? And then the details, right? Like I say, are what makes somebody a master in whatever they do. So for me, the first thing is about the industry I can say is there's three major problems that all restorers will tell you they face. The first two, maybe most home service companies face. The first one is everybody wants the phone to ring, right? You need clients. So that's the first major problem they all face. The second problem they all face is going to be managing the team as you scale, managing people. That's and that comes with clients, right? So managing people is a customer or your internal team, right? It's because it's a heavy business. The third problem they face that some home service companies may not have, such as landscapers, et cetera, is collections. Because a lot of time restoration industries, companies, they're dealing with something called a large loss, which is basically a hurricane hits someone's home or, a fire breaks out. So this is a large loss event in insurance. And they go in and they're literally like, so Pure Clean, actually, I'm going to give them another shout out because Mark Davis is so great. They call themselves the paramedics of property damage because really, right after the firefighters and the police officers get on the scene, if a house, burns down or whatever, maybe there's a huge flood, right? Those guys get in, right? After those guys leave, then restoration people come right in. And the thing I love about that, I'm going to give you another one, right? Is it is truly, if you meet some people, they're really thankful for the restoration people that do the work, right? And because they're going to say, man, I'm really appreciate what you do. You got rid of all the water, right? You really helped me. Or sometimes bio hazard is another industry, right? There's a loss of life event, right? Or there's maybe a hazardous waste, problem, et cetera, right? In the biohazard industry, right? So they're like, man, I was grieving. This is a really emotional event they have versus in home service, you're a landscaper. Hey, I need to get my, my lawn cut, right? It's not as an emotional, challenging problem, right? Now, the thing I think that makes it unique from a business perspective, so that's like the emotional customer journey. From a business perspective, I would say insurance companies, right? They're always trying to do what? They're trying to save money, right? So that's where the collections challenge comes in place because, maybe your house, whatever, right? So, God forbid, knock on wood, something happened, right? Bad to somebody's house, right? And your basement gets flooded. Now you're like, oh, well, I've got home insurance, right? Hopefully you're covered under your, insurance niche. Does the insurance company always go, oh, great, we'll pay you everything that the person who's supposed to fix it is going to fix it? No, they always go down. They send their people. They send like third party estimators, and then they'll say things like, "Oh, Ethan, you came in, you did the job. I think you overscoped this one." And you're like, "What do you mean? I sucked all the water out. I fixed up. There was a damaged wall here, right? I repaired that, all that stuff, right? I did all the work." And they're saying, "No, I don't think so. I think that you could have done it for 20% cheaper." So that's the collections part. Insurance companies, obviously, they love money, right? They're in insurance. Most people, frankly, are in insurance not because they want to take care of people, because they want to make money, right? It's a really insurance is obviously one of the. It's almost as bad as I would say a marketing agency in my world, right? There's a lot of, bad, basically money-driven people in there, right? You don't take an
Right.
insurance person and go, oh, this person's out for my best interest, So basically, there's going to be a back and forth, and that's where collections is one of the biggest challenges in this space. So there's actually, because collections are such a big challenge in restoration, there's companies specifically dedicated to just doing collections for restorers.
Right. And I'm assuming like documentation and all that becomes a lot more important because you're
100%.
dealing with insurance companies.
Yeah, there's a saying in this industry is documentation is how you get paid. And you can send them 100 photos. They might say, oh, well, these photos aren't enough. So you've really got to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed. Yeah, you get your T's dotted and your I's crossed, and you're not gonna get paid.
So I'd love to learn a little bit about just the industry, like any stats, like size of the business, how many players are in the space, who are the biggest players.
And kudos to you for sending me questions ahead of time. I saw that question. I think this is the most interesting one. This is a debatable one, right? Because anyone can be in the restoration industry when they're, if you just do water damage or you just do fire damage or you just do mold. So it's very debatable in terms of how many companies there are in the field. So some people say there's as little as maybe 30,000 or 20,000 restoration companies, right? Other people will say there's 80,000 restoration companies. So
Right.
I'm conservative. I'm going to say there's probably around 40,000, 45,000 restoration companies that are just pure restoration companies. Now, what happens sometimes is these companies will do other things. Like, for instance, oftentimes plumbers, right? Because plumbers will work with restorers, right? Somebody has a burst pipe and now they've got some kind of flood, right? A plumber may start a restoration company, right? So oftentimes, basically, these other businesses, construction, maybe somebody's a general contractor, maybe they'll start doing something called reconstruction in this space, right?
Yeah.
After a fire damage job or water damage, et cetera, right? So these other kind of professionals in home services might take on one or two of these services, but really the heart, I would say, of restoration is water damage. And
Yeah.
and that's kind of what can, I would say, define somebody as a restoration company. So there's basically water, fire. The third thing I would say is wind. Wind damage, what is that? That's really roofing. So roofers can also start the space. So
Right.
it's really right in that home service industry. Lastly, cleaning, right? Because what happens when there's fire damage, that takes place in a home, somebody will have to go in, they have to clean the whole property up, right? And so that's a clean. So sometimes people do cleaning. Sometimes they'll do carpet cleaning because after a fire damage job, maybe they want to restore some carpets. So some of the people in this space, they'll do carpet cleaning or they'll do tile stone cleaning, et cetera. And then they'll get into, these other services, which is water, fire, mold, and bio. These are like the top four.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that totally makes sense. If you think about it, you're doing lawn care where obviously you're taking care of the lawn, but restoration is anything that needs to be restored. So it's a much more broad bucket. But I guess what you're saying, some business will choose to just do like mold or water, and some business will do it all.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah. And when I first got into the space, I thought, and I know you wanted numbers, I would say the space overall. Now, this is also another debatable one, right? The space overall, I would say is about a $200 billion space, right?
Right.
And but obviously this varies because maybe there's a hurricane. If there's a big hurricane, right, then that's going to affect it, right? Then that's going to, more loss, more money, right? I like to think that the space is definitely getting a lot more competitive every day. More and more restorers are popping up. And that actually is good for my company, at least, because the more competition, the more help they need from me, because then the experts, right, that's where they're more valued and highly competitive.
Yeah.
Then the other thing I would say is, besides the large loss events, that's like number one, like hurricanes, et cetera. Then insurance companies, right? How is the law being written for insurance companies to pay out these people, right? But yeah, I think people will sometimes dip their toe in, but they might not like the industry. So I'm going to talk about the cons as well. So obviously the first one we already talked about is the collections element of insurance companies. People really hate that, obviously, because you're a restoration company and you just did whatever, a $50,000 job, right? Or, $7,000, $5,000 job might be small. Let's say a $50,000 project, and it's going to take 180 days, sometimes over a year.
Yeah, you can go bankrupt on that single job, right?
Bingo. Many stories like that in this industry. Many stories, right?
Because you got to pay your people, you got to pay materials, you got to pay time, all of that.
Yeah, sometimes the homeowner themselves will take a look at the bill. They'll be like, "Wait a minute, Ethan, what you did was 50 grand," and how often does the customer undervalue the service provider, right? Every day of the weekend, I have to say twice on Sunday is what I have to say, right? So they'll look at it like, wait, you did this construction. This construction was just hammer and nails and a vacuum, right? It's like, no, this is a real professional. He's licensed. He's certified. There's actually, things called bacteria that can really, take place in the home. And there's really a lot of, challenges in this job that you're overlooking. It's not like a vacuum and a hammer and a nail, but then the customer sees it. And so then maybe they'll tell their insurance provider, hey, I want to get paid. Give me the check. And then they'll say, okay, I'm going to pay you 10% less, 20% less. So the collections. The second part is people in this space. It's highly competitive, right? So sometimes, I like to say it's pirates. There's pirates in the space, right? So you think about how a pirate behaves, because it's not, sometimes in some states, it's not very regulated, right?
Right.
So it depends on kind of the insurance protocols and the laws in this, the state you're in. And then lastly is, listen, it's an emotional event, right? So if there's a water damage job and the customer is super emotional, you have to be good with people, right? And so if you're not good with people, if you get a call at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., like nobody wants to wait if their house is flooded, right? And you arrive on the scene and you're not good in those environments, it's very stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to a few people, and a few people that were new to this space told me that the emergency factor of this business was something that they didn't expect. Like the stakes were much higher than other services you could provide, like landscaping, an example, where if you're delayed or whatever, no one cares.
Yeah.
So that was like the emotional toll and the stress and things like that was something that you have to take into account, and you have to factor into your own lifestyle or how much you're willing to invest in this business.
Yeah, I would say, right, any home service provider that's going in the home versus outside the home, right? In the home, there's more stressful, right? Because this is my sacred area. On top of that, you're going in the home, but also there's a real life emergency happening. Sometimes there could be death, so it's but even besides that, right? Like, if a house burns down, right? Like people aren't calm during those situations. Yeah.
No, that's for sure. But one thing that's interesting is regardless of these challenges we just discussed, the space is growing. Obviously, I think it's tapping into some major trends like climate change. There's more natural disaster events, obviously fires, right? Where we've seen it this year. So more people are getting into the business. That's for sure.
100%. Because there's definitely money in this space, right? When there's high pressure, right? And there's large loss events, there's definitely money in this space, right? So definitely more people are getting into the space. I see franchises popping up. I think I've seen more pop up this year than any other year before, right?
Yeah.
So they're popping up all over the place. The other thing to note about this industry, right, is that you got to really be a business owner, and a lot of times you might be, somebody listening to this podcast, right? Maybe they're a project manager at another restoration company. And they think, oh, well, I could just go out and I can start the business. Well, you got to really manage a business. So a lot of times, Ethan, right, when people start a business, they think, oh, I like cooking, I'm going to start a restaurant. Well, cooking, the food is like maybe 20%, right? 80% is managing the employees, the team. So the biggest challenges I see people coming into this industry is because, these events can be 24/7, right? Most companies that are competitive in this space take on projects 24/7. So basically managing the business and scheduling and being organized is really, really hard in this industry. Yeah. So
and the dynamic of the insurers, which is like, big corporations, you have to understand how a game is being played on the field. Otherwise, you're going to go bankrupt. So like, you obviously need to be a savvier business owner that's someone who's washing windows, where you just get paid basically for doing a job.
Yeah. Right. And because it's a larger project. So I'm going to paint like the worst case scenario, right? Imagine you're a restoration owner, right? What happens? A customer, right? They're calling you because they just got flooded, right? And you're talking to and when they just called you, you actually just were on the phone with another customer who maybe one of your people was on the job, and maybe one of your people left a hose running or whatever, right? They're trying to maybe clean up a project, right? Or maybe they left a tool on the job and their kid slipped on the tool, right? So their kid's injured. So now you got an angry customer here. Right. You got a customer calling you for an emergency job right here, right? They're both highly stressful things. And then on top of that, you got 100,000, 200,000, whatever your revenue size is, right? Let's say 30% of your revenue, insurance company owes you right now. And you don't know whether you are going to get paid. In fact, people do go to court in this space as well, right? So there's also restoration lawyers like specific to the space, right? So you're in the middle of a lawsuit right now, right? 300, 400,000, whatever, right? They're saying you didn't do the job properly. You don't deserve to get paid, right? The customer's suing. So like these three things are going on at the same time. Just picture, right? And
I mean, it looks like meditation services for restoration and just could be a good opportunity.
100% agree, right? These are really, and I really admire these people because they're down to earth. They're really resilient, right? They're down to earth, really resilient people. But that's like the worst. That's like a really hard day right there, right? I didn't even talk about like employees complaining to you, right?
Right.
Employees complaining.
Let's talk about a little bit about marketing, because obviously that's your area of expertise. And like, now you're saying, okay, it's a challenging industry to be in, but there's good money to be made. So a lot of people are coming into this. and let's say I was a new business owner in the space, there's maybe 2 or 3 competitors in my geography. Like, what are the things that I should pay attention to? Like, will I win?
I would say there's going to be 10 competitors in every geography for sure, at least, right?
Right.
So that's the first thing, right? If you're in an area where there's 2 or 3, you need to think you're lucky stars. It's very rare, right? You're maybe in like
Right.
Alaska, and Alaska's a good market, right? And so me just saying this, people know that Alaska's a good market. There's going to be more in Alaska this year than last year, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be 10
Yeah,
to
for
maybe
sure.
20. So what do you need to do for the marketing element? Yeah, this is where we really shine, right? I could talk about this for 5 hours. I would say the biggest thing most people undervalue still today, and a lot of my fellow restoration specialist marketing agencies, right? Like they are finally wising up to this, is Google reviews. So getting more reviews. So the other thing I will say, why am I in this space or just marketing in general, is because we have a unique skill where we actually, if everybody goes to brainylion.com, we actually built free software specifically for this industry for marketing. Like no one else, to my knowledge, still today in this space is building restoration specific marketing software. So we're doing that. We're building out our own internal suite of tools, and then we're also building out public tools for people. So that's kind of my edge, right? But
Right.
so to go back, so the first thing is reviews, right? So we actually have like a review system that we built software out for, and most people in most markets, if you get about 100 reviews, you can do about $1 million in this space. Right now, this excludes really competitive areas. And you might say, well, what's competitive area? Well, it's an area where a lot of disasters occur, such as Florida, right? Another one could be Arizona, ironically. I think it's because maybe there's just not a lot of restoration companies out there. So, right, these are areas where there's a lot of, competition, right?
But let me challenge you on that one, because I feel like reviews obviously has been key in, for all small businesses, especially in home services, for years.
Yeah.
But I feel like now you go into geography, you'll find like 10 players with 400 reviews. Like,
Yes,
can you still differentiate, or is it more table stakes?
It's okay. So this is a great question, and yeah, feel free to challenge me all you want. I told them earlier, guys, anything except my social security. So basically, I would say the first thing is 100 reviews is great for most markets. Most people will have. So the easiest way to understand the math behind it, actually, if you guys want a specific answer, I'll give you the formula. You just look at the top 10. Right? And you want to be in the top 20%. Ideally, obviously you want to be number 1 with the most reviews. But so, if everybody has 100 reviews, right? And let's say the top people 120, you got to get up to 120 to be in the top 20%, right? Because local service ads are what everybody should be running. So I actually did a speech, Ethan, I don't know if you were in the room when I did it at the last conference we met for restorers. And what was interesting was still only maybe 20% of the room was running local service ads. And these are all cleaning restoration companies, right? So I would say, by the way, restoration is the mix between a cleaning company and a construction company, right? You clean up the mess, and then you do construction.
You fix it
after you reconstruct.
Yeah.
But only 20% were actually running ads, right? And only it's really interesting. And I think it's because of that scenario. Hopefully, I painted the picture of you've got this, client screaming about this huge event over here, unhappy client, lawsuit, employees, and so the people that aren't doing great in this business, they don't have time to actually work on the business. They're too busy in the business. And that's why I like to say reviews. Everyone knows reviews are very valuable, but everyone doesn't know how valuable they are. Like, let me ask you a question, Ethan. How much do you think you should be paying to get a 5-star review if you were to give somebody a gift or something, or make it a really nice experience?
I mean, at least $100, but I'm sure you're going to tell me it's worth like $1,000 plus.
Nah, I wouldn't say that. I would say it's 150. You actually did a great job.
Yeah.
I would say it's worth up to $150 per 5-star review. And if you're getting 100 reviews, right, that's where things basically need to
start to become interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's run it down. So you got the reviews, right? You got that going. You got the local ads going. What else do you recommend people do?
Oh, great question.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a field just like any other field, right? I like to say, what makes one painting company better than the rest, right? This is home services, right? So you have to think of the little things. And I'll give you examples. Like one company that I liked actually at the conference, everybody says, we're 24/7. One company said, oh, we'll be at your door in an hour or less, right? Or we pay you.
Right.
Another company said, we'll be at your door in 59 minutes or less, right? So the little thing, just like restaurants, like what makes one restaurant better than the other, right? In a service business, these little things make a difference, right? So these are the things we look at. So we look at things such as, do they have trust badges on their page, right? Are they IICRC certified? Do you have the Better Business Bureau on there? Or do you have your Google reviews on the top of the homepage? The customer doesn't have to scroll down. Do we have a picture of you? This is actually for all home service, because I've had other home service clients as well. I've had plumbers, landscapers, etc. Right? Like, so do you have a picture of you and maybe your team, or you and the dog, you and your wife, right? Separate yourself and say, hey, I am the local Brooklyn landscaping company. I'm the local Brooklyn restoration company, right? People don't do these. And so basically you're competing, whenever you're competing in a highly competitive field like this, you're competing on the margins, the little things. And that's really what make you an expert. Another thing people don't know is Google, if you're running local service ads, and let's say it used to be really hot and you used to be getting a lot of calls and now you got less calls, Google actually measures how long it takes for you to respond. So if you missed a phone call and you missed a couple of calls, or you pick up really slow, guess what? They're going to prioritize somebody else who's picking up the phone. So these little things.
So responsiveness will play a big part as well.
Highly competitive. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So these things all add up.
But those things are interesting because I think like the two things you talked about, they're small things, but one place to like authenticity, like who are the owners, I want to deal with someone, I want to know it's a local business. And the second piece, which is just like credentials and like, testimonials, like knowing that other people like this business, it makes sense, but I agree with you. Not everyone thinks about them or puts in enough effort into
like most people, like how much would you pay to take a referral partner out to eat? Yeah. Like someone who would refer you business.
I mean, like $500.
There you go. Right. Most people don't do that I would say most service, because like I said, I've been around for 10 years in the marketing agency space. The last 4 years is going on year 5 in this space. Right. So I would say that most people don't think about spending $500 to take out their top 20%. They can't even, they don't even think about the top 20%. Why? Because they're overwhelmed. And so I'm seeing this overwhelm in this space. Where we compete on, where we're better at than like, let's say a generic marketing agency, right? Is we have all the keyword data. We know all the little phrases in the industry long tail, right? And that's what makes us better, because we already have the copy and the landing pages. And so we can launch much faster than generic agency. And then on the flip side, right, we also are building restoration AI software. So we help people really make changes even faster, right? So it's all about speed of implementation. Where the restorers can actually be better, I would say, is consistency. And I think even though I said the top 3 problems are, number 1 is making the phone ring, number 2 is managing people, and number 3 is, collections. I would say even though most people will say making the phone ring is their biggest issue, the real biggest issue actually is organization and managing people and managing themselves. Because if you're amazing at managing people, then you're going to get more 5-star reviews. And if you're amazing at managing people, then you're going to end up actually doing all the correct documentation, and you're going to be getting paid. And you're not even, and you're going to have the smoothest conversations that are possible with the insurance companies. And insurance companies will try every trick in the book, right? They'll hire, third-party adjusters, or TPAs is what we call them, right? To try to, say, hey, there's a third party, even though we know the insurance company is literally paying this guy. So what are they going to do? They're going to look, you think they're going to look for the third-party adjuster that's going to pay the restorer the most money?
Yeah. Otherwise they're not going to get hired.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So,
they're never going to get hired.
If you're good at managing people and managing the systems, right, then the other things will start solving themselves. And then you can find time to get the reviews, to build the relationships, and to have a well-run business. And a well-run business is a rare business, because life is hectic.
Look, because a well-run business in this space, even if you're not as good on marketing, over the long run, you're going to win. It's just a question of time, right? You're going to get the good reviews. You're going to collect more cash, which means you can reinvest in your people. And so that totally makes sense. One thing that we chatted during the conference, I want to cover quickly, is this growth in like franchises in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that's the case? And like, what do you think are the benefits and disadvantages of that?
Okay. So originally when I started in the space, so there's mold, fire, water, bio, and then people will start, arguing, and they're like, oh, what about reconstruction? What about, pack outs, contents, which is basically where you take anything, if there's like a hazard or whatever in the house, you take that out and you store it. It's like a storage business, right?
Yeah.
So long story short, right? Like there's other subservices, but these are I'd say top 4. So when I did mold, right, and I didn't go after just restoration, those mold inspectors or mold remediators, they just do mold jobs. They'll make maybe on average, So like maybe 250 to max $1 million. Like if you're doing $1 million, like one of my clients, right? My early clients doing $1 million a year, 1.5. He's like in the top 5% of mold remediation companies.
Yeah.
Right. So that's big, right? But in this space, and I know a mold inspector who was at the conference, he's doing 2 million. He just does inspections, right? But he's stuck because it's $200 a job. In this space, right? Projects will go anywhere from 3,500 up to, I mean, you could get $1 million projects, right? If it's a commercial, right? We were just talking residential. We're talking about commercial, right? So the reason franchises are popping in this space is because it's simple. They smell the money, right? It's everybody wants to make more money, right? The American dream. And the challenge, there's a challenge though with franchises, right? The challenge is as a franchise owner, and we work with franchises as well, right? And there's pros and cons. The pro, right, is you actually have a proven system, right? And a proven business model, right? And you have a brand you can get behind, right? Now the con with this thing, now this is what the con with the franchise, right? If I said, hey, Ethan, right, start a cleaning company. It's a proven business model. You're like, yeah, what do I need you for a franchise, right? So a bad franchise, right, they don't have a lot of support. So the number one thing I get from franchisees is they feel like they are a lack of support. They feel like they're hoodwinked.
Right.
They feel like I sell you like, hey, you know, not even just restoration, whatever, construction, start a general contracting company. It's a proven business model. Vlad's General Contracting is the brand, right? And then you get in it and I'm like, look at all these billion-dollar companies in the space. You can be successful. And now you're like, oh, well, I'm constricted to this region and I have no training, I have no marketing support, et cetera, right? Now, on the flip side, right, a well-run franchise will crush it. Like, obviously, everybody knows, 911 Restoration, ServPro, there's a lot of really big players here. They actually, some of these are in with these bigger insurance providers and they'll do jobs directly, right? So you can get bigger projects. That's the pro of these franchises if you pick the right ones in the right region. So anyone out there who's considering buying a franchise, I would do the math in terms of the competition, because one thing I like to say is it's like if you're playing Monopoly and every property is worth the same value, but they all pay different amounts of rent, right? So you got franchises, and it's not their job to do all the marketing, research, et cetera, for you, right? It's their job to basically get as big as possible to build a great brand, because that's what they're trying to sell you on, the brand, so then customers can buy into that brand. So, these are kind of my thoughts on franchises. They can, I've seen a lot of cons in franchises. I really like private companies. So I like companies where I control the website, et cetera, from a marketing perspective. But then we'll see the pros in them as well, right? So I have worked with franchises before. I have active franchise clients, right, where they say, I used to actually have my own. So I had, these are more rare case scenarios, but these happen as well, right? It's like I used to have my own private company where I did restoration, but then I bought into a pure plane. Like I literally met a guy at the experience conference, and I was like, well, why'd you buy in? He said, well, I get support. I get, they have program work, right? They have different expertise I didn't have, and I feel like these are more organized. So, and he actually liked it. So it's interesting, right?
Right.
It's a bit more rare though.
Yeah, I think there's like I said, like some business owners, they feel like they're on their own. There's no one, there's no one to talk to. There's no like advice you can get. Whereas now you're part of a network, right? You're part of like a community. But I get what you're saying, because it's been something I've been asking myself, because I feel like if you buy like a Burger King, right, or something like that, like in a certain geography, you're gonna get traffic. Whereas like you buy like a home service business, you still have to do a lot of the work to get that traffic there. So I think there's definitely pros and cons there.
There's a lot of work. And this is the thing, right? It's all a lot of work. And people see restoration companies, like the average restoration company, if you're in this space for like 5 years, you can make $1 million, right? So it's not like if you can run $1 million company in this space, right? If you do a good job, you can probably run $1 million company in this space. If you're in it for 5-10 years and you're consistent, you work, 60, 80 hours a week, right? There's just a ton of money in construction, right? In home services. The thing that most franchisees don't do is they don't talk to 5 or 10 other previous franchisees. They don't talk to 3 to 4 marketing agencies, right? And bad franchisees are really the bad franchise owners and bad business owners is what I was going to say, actually, right? Bad business owners, they'll say, I got burned by my previous marketing agency. Okay. How many marketing agencies did you actually interview? Did you interview 10?
Right.
Or 2?
So doing your due diligence, right? Actually doing some work before you start. I think that's so common. Everyone's out there's been burned by everything, but that's just because they didn't pick the right product also. Like everyone's got to take accountability.
They
right, for those
didn't tell
choices.
themselves, yeah, even though I'm talking, oh, here's the other problem with franchises, right? Is the bigger you get, and this is all business, right? But this is specifically for franchises because obviously we're talking about franchising. The bigger you get, like let's say me and you start Ethan and Vlad Restoration, right? That's our franchise. Our first probably 30 to 50 franchisees, they're probably going to love us. Why? Because we're co-founders and they got access to us, right?
Yeah.
So I had some of these franchises complain to me, like back in the good old days, I could call Bob directly, right? What happens? We hire Sally or, we hire, James. Now this is a salesperson. They don't have as much knowledge as us. They don't have as much training. They don't have as much passion because they're, rightfully so, they don't have the equity, right? Then this becomes more difficult, right? Now, what's James more concerned about? He's more concerned about hitting his franchise sales goals, right? His commission goals, et cetera, right? So then he meets a customer, right? Customer number 52. This customer, right, gets sold in an area where probably it's really competitive, right? James says, oh, look at all our other 50. They're crushing it, right? James doesn't really know any better. The customer doesn't know any better, right? Maybe he works from a high-tech company. He didn't do his due diligence, bought into a franchise. And how often do you think that happens, Ethan?
Yeah.
All about.
Yeah, you have to do your due diligence. Regardless, you got to do the work, right? There's no free lunch in any business. There's no easy money. So you got to put in the work. We only have 2-3 minutes left. I know your time is valuable. One last question. Obviously, I know you're working on some AI stuff as well. Like, how do you think AI is going to help home service businesses?
So this is why I love home service, right? Because we're in an industry, specifically, obviously I'm in restoration, but we're in an industry where we're going to be like, if AI takes us over, then, it's like the Terminator movie, right? Like we're the last to get disrupted.
Yeah.
So I think AI is going to help, is going to do more good in this industry than other industries, right? Where things are getting crazy competitive, like, marketing. And this is why I actually moved in for the last 4 years from Logic Inbound to Restoration Inbound, which is why I wear this hat every day, right? Is basically, we can actually do better quality work. So stuff like estimating, right? Writing estimates for clients, handling customer complaints, helping you just stay organization overall, with your organization overall, right? Scheduling, recording video calls, training with your team, all of this AI can actually help you save time on. So I think AI is going to do a lot more good for home service than, other industries where it gets a lot more competitive, like for programmers, it gets a lot more scary. Like, there's a lot more disruption.
Yeah, and the white collar jobs, right, where basically now AI can just write the copy for you, can do the design. Whereas, like I agree with you, until the robots and the AI comes together at the level where you trust that robot to fix your plumbing or restore your house, it's not going to happen. So that there's still some time left, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I would say this also, right? I forgot who said this, but I don't know, maybe Ben Horowitz or one of these famous like VCs, like, these venture capitalists in the tech industry. What we thought was that AI was going to get rid of all the really low wage workers, like the McDonald's front desk cashier or whatever, right? But what's happening is AI is actually eating from both the high end and the low end at the same time. And these businesses, right, they're not like the most highly profitable businesses, but they're not bad business either. I would say they're safely in the middle, right? Now, who knows?
Right.
Maybe tomorrow there's going to be an AI restoration company that just crushes everybody. I have completely wrong, but I'm fairly confident though. I 80% sure that this is a great home service is a great place to be less afraid of AI and safe.
All right, sounds good. Well, we got to wrap it up. Where can people find out more about Restoration Inbound or find you?
Yeah, restorationinbound.com, right? Restorationinbound.com. Go on our website. If you text that number and you mention the name Vlad, if you say, hey, Vlad, saw you talking with Ethan, my team, I've got, a team of 15 people, they'll all start yelling like, hey, somebody mentioned your name, Vlad, and so I'll respond to you directly. So you can just go on restorationinbound.com and then you can text me directly on the phone number of the site. You can give me a call at, on the phone number for the website or Vlad at restorationinbound.com. I'm happy to talk about business. I love business. I've been doing it for 15 years now, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that it can be lonely, it could be hard. It could also be fun. So, yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Well, appreciate it. And we'll catch you with you.
Thank you.